site.
Scott Royster just texted me saying he's having trouble connecting to Zoom right now. We'll see. No, that's one of the ones we were waiting on.
Yesterday was a real challenge for me on a number of Zoom meetings. I don't know if it was my internet connection or Zoom overall as a server, but it was tough. I had 3 or 4 in the morning that lagged quite a bit, and then one about 3:30 in the afternoon that just stumbled the whole way through. So it was tough. Not the perfect vehicle, certainly.
No. Not at all.
All right, well, there's Scott. Looks like you made it through. And since it is just a few minutes after 2, I'm going to vote again, since this was being recorded, even though there's some folks missing that had registered, I vote that we dig in for the sake of being punctual. And for those that are here on time, that we can end on time as well. So I think everybody knows that the financial impact of the COVID outbreak has been just unprecedented. It's affected businesses in very different ways. It's affected individuals and families in very different ways. Today, we're going to talk about those of us who are very fortunate to still have stable income. But even then, it has, if nothing else, given us a new perspective, some concern about how we may have planned in the past or not planned appropriately. And how we may want to reevaluate looking forward if there's another event like this, how we may need to plan, readjust our budget, plan for an emergency fund, look at our debt to income ratios and talk about what that needs to look like. And also think about what could be a very unfortunate and worst case scenario, and having an income generator in our family be disabled. Or potentially lose their lives as something as serious as it could possibly be. But those are all very realistic things now, more so than ever, we think. So we've got Drew Carter from Crossfire Financial with us today, and Grady Smith from our financial planning department here at Jones. So Drew, if you would just give us a quick background on what you do on a day-to-day basis, what kind of clients you work with, and then when you wrap up, we'll cue up Grady a little bit, because I know you all work in conjunction quite a bit. So Drew, if you don't mind, give us a little background.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Joe. So like you said, my name is Drew Carter. I am with Crossfire Financial Coaching. I am a Ramsey preferred coach. If you're familiar with Dave Ramsey, that's who I got my certification through, and that's the kind of process that I teach with my clients. My main focus is on budgeting and getting out of debt, and just basically getting you to financial freedom. We like to call it financial peace, and going through the steps and the motions to work with clients that just maybe haven't ever done it before, or maybe they just need a little push in the right direction, whether it's a married couple, somebody just starting out, or a couple in their 50s that just hasn't ever got, kind of off and running. So I do a bunch of different things with that, but like I said, mainly focusing on the budgeting side and the personal finance aspect of that. So after that, I pretty much get you to where you need to be and ready to start investing, and then I toss you over to Grady, and I'll let him introduce himself and kind of talk more about how we work together.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Drew. So like Joe mentioned, I'm with Jones Keystone, kind of helping to run and spearhead the financial services division within Jones. And just like Drew said, so what does financial services mean? That means protection, savings, and growth. Where the best place for us to invest and save and grow our assets, what kind of different tax qualified plans can we use, whether it be 401ks, IRAs, and then as well as touching on the protection side, making sure that we're ready for life events, which, we might not be expecting. But how's it going, Ruth? yeah, but just to make sure that we are ready and are able to financially absorb situations which we may not expect.
Yeah, and nothing more unexpected than where we are now. And that leads us into our first topic, that of an emergency fund. What is an emergency fund? Is it a pile of cash under your mattress? Is it a savings account in the Bahamas? What is it? Is it a go bag in the closet? So that's one thing that you both lean on heavily, and this is a time to talk more about it. So Drew, tell us your concept of an emergency fund, when it comes into play, and how to build one if you haven't started yet.
Sure. No, emergency fund for me and for working with my clients is one of the most important steps. If you're familiar, we work the baby steps. They're really just basic financial steps, and we start with a small emergency fund. My first recommendation is $1,000. That works for most people to cover pretty everyday, normal, large expenses that may come up. Maybe not a major medical emergency or things like that, but for the most part, that $1,000 covers a lot of it. And it really is kind of just to jumpstart somebody that may never have saved anything before for a rainy day, or it could just be somebody that's never taken the time to really say, hey, why do I need this and what's so important about it? Then later on, we come back and we fully fund it. I recommend 3 to 6 months of expenses for your emergency fund. And that just gets you through a job loss, gives you time to look for something that may come up. That would then cover a major medical expense if you did have something like that happen in your life, and just anything else that may come up. Because the goal for me working with my clients is to turn an emergency into just an inconvenience. It's not something that, you worry about daily and you're constantly just, oh, what's going to happen? If something comes up, you say, look, this is what I prepared for. This is what I saved for. It's okay. And you move on. So it's very important in everyday life now more than ever. I think everything going on has really opened some people's eyes to the importance of it. Maybe they didn't think it was important in the past, and now they see, hey, if we had a little bit of a cushion to fall back on, that would be something that's really good. So I think it's huge there. And, for me, starting out, like I said, $1,000 usually is the go-to, always adjustable per person. And then, there's different ways to go about it. For me, it's all about budgeting and saving. And then I'll let Grady kind of hit on some of the questions as far as, should I use other money? Should I pull money out of my 401k? Does my 401k count? Grady, you want to touch on that?
So kind of, I guess, a hot button topical issue is, the CARES Act and, certain reducing of restrictions when it comes to pulling hardship withdrawals from a 401k. CARES said if your plan does allow for hardship withdrawals or loans, that you can actually withdraw up to $100,000 without having to incur what the typical 10% penalty outside of if in previous years, if you'd had to pull funds from that 401k. So you have 3 years to actually pay back what you pulled out from your 401k without having to report what you pulled as income. But I guess the big question is that the best place to pull funds? We want to avoid it if we can. It is, if you have found yourself in a tough financial spot, maybe your spouse has lost his job, or maybe you've lost your job or have reduced income during this time and are truly unable to cover your day-to-day expenses, then it is an option. But we do want to avoid that, and the primary reason for that is we want to avoid, what we kind of call double dipping from your assets or your plans. So let's just say for someone who's maybe 30 years old, they've got $50,000 sitting in their 401k at this time. They've lost their job. I say, hey, I need to pull some money out in the meantime. Let me pull out $25,000 to get me through the next 6 months. By pulling out that $25,000, you're stunting the growth of your overall nest egg, where now, sure, the goal would be to eventually replenish and recontribute to that 401k, but you will have to receive a 100% return of investment on that $25,000 just to, just to recoup to the level that you were of that $50,000. So we want to avoid double dipping. It's nice that there are, that the CARES Act has, allowed opportunity if we do find ourselves in a, in a really tough financial situation, but we do want to avoid it if we can.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a broad message, from stocks to other investments that are interest bearing, 401ks. Try to avoid getting in those if at all possible. And the other thing a lot of folks are realizing now, if their income has been affected negatively, they're really looking at their budget in a whole new and different way. Drew, I know that's something you spend time with folks on, kind of line iteming, looking at what's essential, what's necessary, what's a luxury, what's a convenience. So tell us more about your approach to that now that people are so in tune with maybe my Netflix isn't as necessary as I thought it was, or hey, maybe I need to put more in Netflix and cut my cable because I'm not watching that. I'm binging Netflix all the time. It's little things, isn't it? Tell us more about your thoughts.
Yeah, you're exactly right. A lot of times when I'm going through and working with a budget with one of my clients, there's a lot of nitpicking that happens as far as where we can find that extra cash. A lot of times I'm dealing with people that they're really living paycheck to paycheck and they just can't seem to get their footing. So when you go through and you see all these things that you could maybe cut out, it changes, kind of their cash flow, I'll say. But when you look at it now, we've kind of been introduced to a time where there's not really any almost ability to spend that extra money other than maybe Netflix or Hulu or new Disney Plus for the movies coming out for the kids. But for the most part, we're not going out to eat. You maybe get some takeout food here and there from your favorite local place that's open. We're not going to the movies. You're not going to concerts. There's all these things that have almost, kind of stepped out of your budget. And it's really actually made it easier because now you see, okay, I can look at this and say, these are my normal monthly expenses. For some people, that's really hard to figure out. But right now, that's what you're spending. You're covering your basic utilities, your necessities, your food, like I said, maybe supporting one or two local restaurants, but not eating out all the time. And then, your four walls as far as transportation, like I said, utilities, housing, all those things are super important. And now we've gotten down to the bare bones of a budget, which really is a great starting point because from there you can kind of add in those things when you see what you have available. But when you're trying to take out everything you've already put in, it starts to get a little frustrating. So it's actually really helped in that sense, working with clients to really perfect a normal monthly expense number for them. And then, like I said, for the emergency fund, that's what we base it off of. It's not based off of, okay, if I lose my job and I still want to go to the movies and go to a ball game and do all these things, what do I need to have? No, it's what do I need to survive for these next couple months while I find a new employment. So that's really important for that and just kind of rolling with that. I know, Grady, you have a little bit of a different way of looking at it, the 50-30-20 rule you said. So I'll let you hit on that.
Yeah, I think that Drew's great at, taking that a real micro look at someone's budget and really finding the gaps and areas of opportunity. I typically try and look at it from a more of a macro approach, and I use what's called the 50-30-20 model. And that's 50% should be the maximum you spend for your fixed expenses for a given month. 30% should be the maximum that you spend on variable expenses for the given month. Because we do, we're allowed to live a little bit, right? We want to find some time for fun, but we don't want that number to go above 30%. So, and then 20% is the minimum that we want to be contributing towards our financial goals. And whether we're in the position where we need to be focusing on paying down debts, whether it be credit cards or student loans, or if we just want to be saving exclusively for retirement, or, if we're in the spot where we want to be saving for, a child's college education. That's sort of the model and approach that I typically use. If people are abiding by that 50-30-20 model, then typically they're set up for a success story financially. So, yeah.
That is a good rule of thumb. And I know a lot of people struggle with the 20% on investing. But in many cases, I know you've sat down with a number of folks within our organization, a number of our employers and employees of our clients. And when you put it in real numbers, and then you talk about what that looks like in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, especially with those of us that have kids, it goes, wow, yeah, it really needs to be 20%. I struggle to get 15. But when you put it in real numbers and long-term growth, it makes a lot of sense. So I like both of those approaches. They feed each other really well. But it brings up another point on that investing strategy. Drew, we've talked about emergency funds. We've talked about budgets. A lot of people are looking at their investments right now and going, geez, things are struggling. Do I stop investing? Do I change my investment strategy? Are you kind of a long haul guy? Say, hey, ride it out, keep your contributions. Tell us what your advice is to most of your clients.
Yeah, definitely. So I've had that hard conversation with all of my clients. They're all contributing to retirement accounts. They're all, putting money in different areas, whether it be mutual funds, IRAs, their 401ks at work. The biggest change for them that really set everything off, it seems, is some employers stopped their contributions to employees' 401ks. So a lot of them were like, hey, I'm not getting the match. What do I do? And so it kind of set them into a panic. But the thing is that just because they're not putting money in doesn't mean you stop putting money in. If everything is good, you're meeting your requirements for your payments, you're not running behind on any of your bills, and everything is stable, just keep doing what you're doing. That's going to be, I'm definitely, like you said, a long haul guy. We do it today, but it's not for the future. A lot of what I talk about and preach is all delayed gratification. For me, that shows maturity in my clients, financial maturity, if you will. They go from, hey, I got to go buy this right now, to, hey, maybe I don't need it. Let's go home. Let's think about it. Okay, I don't need it. Let's put that money to something useful. We talk about that all the time. And retirement is no different. We're kind of, giving that money today to give it time to grow. Because like Grady said, you can try and play catch up at the end of the game, but it's not the same as getting in there early. So, I definitely am having all of them still contribute and do everything that they were doing before all this hit, as long as they're financially sound. And, with that, I know Grady may have similar opinion, but maybe some more insight. Usually he's my investment guy that I send everybody to, so I'll let him talk about it a little bit.
So, you kind of touched on starting as early as you can and putting in as much as you can earlier while we have a longer time horizon. I think I've heard the quote that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world, that he who understands it prospers from it. And it really is true. Every dollar that you could put in, while you have 30 years to go until retirement, is going to be worth exponentially more than if you wait until you're 10 years out to begin contributing aggressively towards your retirement. It's simple. It's very simple math, but we should expect, is a reasonable expectation for our retirement investments to double every 10 years. All right. So every dollar that I can put in while I'm 28 years old right now is going to be worth just exponentially more than if we wait until, we're approaching that retirement age. And you kind of touched on some people who maybe are a little hesitant of what the market is doing right now. It's no secret that it is highly volatile. We've seen the market has been surprisingly resilient in the last month, I would say, as it has began to rally back. But people are still hesitant about what might happen moving forward. So there are questions like, hey, I'm concerned about my investment performance. Should I stop contributing to my 401k or IRAs or other tax qualified plans? And we can have a conversation about rebalancing potentially, because we want to make sure we're adhering to each and every individual client's overall risk tolerance. And if you are someone who is a little bit more hesitant with the current state right now, then okay, maybe it makes sense to rebalance towards more conservative investments. But let's still continue to fund those accounts, if we do have stable income at this time, because we want to receive those 401k employer matches, if they're available to us, those are extremely valuable, and we lose that if we stop contributing. That's free money we're leaving on the table, as well as tax deductions that we can take from contributing to 401ks, or tax benefits in retirement if we're contributing to Roth 401ks or Roth IRAs. I mean, it really is important to use the resources that are available to us. Keep as much money in your pocket and as little money in Uncle Sam's pocket as possible is the name of the game, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. You touched on it again. You said stable income. So again, we're addressing this. This is the first session out of three that we're going to discuss the financial impact. But again, we're talking about folks that still have that stable income, even if it's reduced a bit, things to look at, things to consider. And Drew, you mentioned that since we are at home, we're not going out, we're not going to concerts, maybe we still have that little bit of variable spending money, that 30% that Grady addressed. With that, should people continue to pay down debt? Should they maybe put more towards some debt if they have that free money now versus investing, or just steady as she goes? Any thoughts on that?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a huge debt-free fan. That's my goal with all of my clients, is to get them that freedom from having a debt payment every single month. And right now, if you are in a good position with a stable income and you've got some extra cash floating around because maybe you're not doing as much, that money, as long as you've got an emergency fund, you're covered in case something were to happen and change in the next couple months. Go for it. I am all about driving that debt down and really using every dollar that you have. A big thing for me when I'm working with a budget is we do a zero-based budget. And what that means is that every single dollar has a name. So we don't let anybody just kind of float around, because if you don't tell your money where to go, it's going to go wherever it wants. And so that's really important when I'm working with my clients. And one of those things is paying down debt. That's pretty early on in the process, because it just frees up so much of your income later on down the road to do other things that you want to do and that you have the desires to do. Plan for retirement, save up and make big purchases that you've been wanting for a long time, things like that. So right now, 100%, if you've got your stable income and, maybe even a little bit reduced, but your monthly expenses aren't as high, and you have that extra cash flow, I think it's great to start, maybe knock down a credit card that you've been putting off paying for a while, just making the minimum payments, or make an extra student loan payment. Or if you don't have any of that stuff and maybe you just have a mortgage, it's not a bad time to, try and knock down the principal on your house. But, at the same time, if you are in a position where you've got a small emergency fund and you just want that little extra bit of cushion, I'm also 100% okay with kind of putting that money away in an emergency fund. And what I've been working with a lot of clients on is a delayed debt payment. And what I mean by that is you take that money that you would pay towards your debt, and just say maybe you're not comfortable doing that because things are happening at your company and you're really not sure what's going to happen in June. And you take that money and you put it in a savings account as a debt account. And when I say debt account, it's not debt. It's just earmarked so that when all this is over, I've got a chunk of change sitting in the bank ready to pay off a big part of my debt. And so you're kind of making the payment to yourself right now to give yourself a cash cushion. But when everything smooths out, it's ready to go, and you can make that debt payment when you're a little more comfortable and secure in everything that's going on. And a lot of people really like that idea. For me, it's either way, but just as long as it has a purpose is the main goal there. Grady, I know, some people may go back to the 401k thing and even say, hey, should I pull out money from my 401k while this whole CARES Act thing is going on and maybe pay off some debt that I have?
Yeah, that's that's something that we do want to avoid. But I think the most important thing that most people can do who are currently in a position of stable income is put together a plan. Even myself, I do this for a living. I fortunately get to see millions of dollars grow over time. But even for myself, if I have money and I see it, I spend it. right? So all of my investments are all automated. I know this much is going to my 401k, this much is going to my IRA, and this is a little this. And then these funds are earmarked for this purpose. I'm currently saving for a wedding right now. I have X amount of dollars that are going towards that each month, right? So it's sort of, but I have all these things automated because once again, it's just much easier to get yourself into an established routine. That's more, I've found that there are more success stories if you're able to set up routines, in a few months, you won't miss that extra money. And then if at this time, once again, we're spending less than we typically do, which some of us are, some of us aren't. I think my phone's vibrated about 3 times since I've been here, and I think that's my girlfriend on my Amazon Prime account, a little notification that something else is being ordered and sent our way. So, but if we do find, some extra funds left over at this time, then sure, now might be a great time to, make a lump sum payment towards debt or a goal we've been working on and working towards. So, but really we want to put together that overall holistic financial plan, and that really is protection, savings, and growth. And I know that Drew, you typically have some rules of thumb you look towards when you're discussing protection, right?
Yeah, that's something that's really early on in everything I do. Maybe step one, starting that emergency fund. Part of that whole step is really sit down and analyze, hey, what does my insurance look like? Do I have the right coverage here? Do I have the right coverage with my home? Am I paying too much? Should I go somewhere else? And, one of the biggest things that we always fall back on is planning for the horrible future that is always a possibility of, an untimely death or, maybe an accident that somebody can no longer work. And it's amazing to me that the number of clients that come in and, are later on in life that have never filled out a will. And that's always something that, hey, this is super important. I need you to really put some money aside this month. We're not going to go and we're not going to order 4 Domino's pizzas every Friday night this month. What we're going to do is we're going to put that money aside and we're going to get a will done. That's one of the first steps. And right behind that is life insurance. You just never know. And life insurance is one of those things where when it's too late, it's gone, right? There's no, I should have got that last week before I had this something horrible happen. And now, well, I can't get it. For me, that hit home way early on. My profession outside of this is firefighting. And, that's something that's always a possibility. And being married, I don't want to leave a mess behind. So that was our first step, was getting everything in order and just being prepared for the unexpected. Nobody ever plans to go through that. And so you really have to sit down. Emergency funds are great. Having insurance to back it up is even better. For me, I always recommend 10 times your annual income to start out for life insurance. That's just the general recommendation. Go find out, here, get some quotes. But that's what we shoot for, because we really want to be able to replace that lost income if something were to happen. And so, Grady, I know that's more your alley than mine. So I'll let you kind of talk a little bit about those insurance policies and things.
Yeah, so it really is, the fun stuff is the saving and investing, right? That's the stuff that, I'm truly passionate about. But at the same time, we want to make sure that everybody is buttoned up and does have appropriate coverage, because I have had to deliver and slide a couple checks across the table to clients who have had an unexpected expiration, and you see the value and the importance of it. So it's not a prerequisite for doing investment business with us, but we'll bug you about it every single time if you don't have adequate coverage. And you touched on the 10 to 12 times income. Some people say, do I really need that much? I had one couple, both of which made pretty good money, or decent money. He made 110, she made 90, and they each had policies for 100K, because they were kind of like, well, if something happened to one of us, we'd be. I'm sure that the other parent would be able to take care of the kids, and and that really is first off, if something happened to both of them at the same time, that point is null and void. But it's all about replacing expected income to a lifestyle which you've grown accustomed to, right? So I think in that scenario, if something did happen to one of them, they're not wrong that they're not going to have to worry about where their next meal is going to come from, or making sure there's a roof over their kid's head. But maybe you get to the point where, all right, our kids are going to have to choose between soccer and piano lessons, right? Maybe you have to make choices, because you're no longer to live the same lifestyle which you were accustomed to. So once again, it really is making sure they're able to replace that income, as soon as, especially once you become dependent on someone else's income, or you have dependents who are dependent on your income. So, but not just life insurance, also disability coverage as well. That's something that we're a huge advocate for here at Jones. If something, if you were to become incapacitated, and that's not just, most people hear the word disability and they assume just confined to a wheelchair. It's not necessarily just that. It's also illnesses as well, which cause you to become unable to work or perform your specific occupation. So it's important to make sure you have adequate coverage to replace a portion of your income. Rule of thumb is you want to look to replace anywhere between 60 to 70% of your income prior to becoming disabled. So those are the things that we want to make sure that we have buttoned up, so we don't have to worry or be fearful, and then we are able to aggressively save for our retirement and live a wealthy and healthy lifestyle. That's what everybody's striving for sure. So trying to get in as good a shape as Drew, though. You're not letting the quarantine 15 get to you over there, man. I'm jealous.
Oh, it's been hard.
Yeah, guys, I appreciate it. A lot of great points. And with that, it kind of comes back to full circle. The disability, the life, those are the worst case scenarios in a situation like this. But again, it gives us some perspective, and it reminds us we do need to plan for these things, from the emergency fund to just the basics of where are my dollars going today, and where are they going to be next year, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, regardless of another pandemic, regardless of me being unable to work, just keeping things in check. And I think this is a good time for folks, again, the fortunate among us that have that steady income, to maybe reevaluate and think about, if this had impacted me in a different way, what would I have done? So I hope everybody will keep that in mind. Again, we'll be sharing this session on our website, and we'll be sending out some clients that couldn't attend today. But we have another session that will address those folks that have lost their income, or at least a significant portion of their income, next Thursday at the same time. So we'll hope other folks will be able to join us for that. And in the meantime, if you've had any questions from this session, feel free to send those to askjones@jones-insurance.com, and we'll get a reply. Again, askjones@jones-insurance.com. Or if you have questions for the next event, again, focusing on individuals or maybe employees of employers, the employers that may be attending, what questions are you getting about how they can better structure the dollars, the savings that they have now to address these things like budget, investing, drawing from 401ks in a true time of need and emergency. So again, I really appreciate you guys spending your time this afternoon. We look forward to seeing you all next week, and please send us any questions in the meantime.
Sure. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
All right. See y'all soon. Take care.
You too.